So in today's video, I'm going to show you a fun way of illustrating watercolor bananas in Procreate. The technique doesn't require any planning or sketching, and the tricks I cover here will help you with painting fruit in general. As usual, you can follow this with any brushes you want, but I'll list mine in the description. So as you can see, I've got this little image placed in up here, and this is going to be my color palette, and you can download it in the description. It's just an image, and if you do a long press on it, you can pull a color from it. And I'll start with that yellow tone. For the brush, I'll use the medium quill, and I'm going to start painting a sort of background wash for each banana, and these are all stroke based. So I'm going to start with a very, very light pressure and just kind of go up a little bit. Then I'll reverse it and then kind of abruptly press harder, hold the same pressure, and then taper it off. And this shape isn't perfect for a banana. I think it looks more like a chili pepper, but it's good enough for now, and I'll show you how to refine it later on. Now after this kind of initial pass, I like to go over it again, kind of on the bottom here, just to add a shadow. Now these bananas are going to be sort of like in a bunch, and I need to paint the next one up here, but basically it needs to be behind the first banana. So to sort of avoid the overlapping effect, I'm going to temporarily mask it off. So to do that, I'll grab the selection tool, set to automatic, and I'm going to tap and drag on the white area, and I'm going to set the threshold there to around 30%. There we go. Then I can go back to my brush, and you can see I can paint normally in the white areas, but it sort of protects the first banana here, and I can't go over the top of it. So this is how I'm going to layer the bananas together. So I'll just do the next banana basically the same way. I'll do the shadow, and I'll repeat this same process a couple times until I have maybe 4 or 5 bananas. And just for fun, I'll do 2 kind of loose bananas off to the side. And then while I'm at it, I'll connect the bunch of bananas here at the top just by drawing this kind of curved arc shape. And there we go. I think these bananas look sort of okay, but the shape isn't quite right. So the next thing I like to do is refine that. So for that, I'll go to my adjustments and I'll go to liquefy. I'll set it to push, and you can adjust the size like this. And I'm just going to go in there and sort of push and pull the shape of the bananas and just try to refine them. And there we go. That took a little bit of time, but I think it did improve the shape quite a bit. Next, I want to add a little bit of green shading. So for that, I'll use the freehand selection tool, and I'll just select the crown area of the bananas, and then very lightly and kind of randomly at the tips. Then I'll feather it out, maybe around 10%. If you feather it out too much, it won't have a strong effect. Then I can go to hue, saturation, and brightness, and I'll darken it, and then shift the hue just a little bit towards a sort of yellowy green tone. After that, I'll make another selection, this time just on the crown. I'll feather it out, and I'll shift it to a slightly darker green tone. Next, I'm going to add some highlights. So those will be on a separate layer above the bananas, and I'll choose a sort of yellowish white tone. For the brush, I'll use the fine liner pen, and I'll just kind of roughly block these out. After that, I'll go to my adjustments, Gaussian blur, and I'll soften these up. After that, I can kind of adjust the kind of layer opacity to refine the effect. And once I'm happy with how it looks, I'll merge it together with the main layer. And with the shading finished, we can move on and start adding some of the details, and I like to start with the outlines, and those are going to be on a separate layer above the main layer. I'm also going to set this transparency mode to multiply. For the brush, I'm going to use the annoying pen brush, and then for the color, I'm going to grab this green tone. Now this annoying pen brush is a little bit tricky, because if I press very lightly on the screen, it doesn't make any lines at all. If I press harder, it makes a rough line. But if I press right in the middle of that, it creates a sort of broken, kind of a light broken line like this. And this is really exactly what this pen was designed for. So I'm going to use it very carefully at this sort of medium pressure and add a light outline on each of the bananas. After that, I'll kind of lighten the opacity of the outline layer, just so they're a little bit less visible. Then I'll grab the selection tool set to freehand, and I'm just going to select the outlines that are overlapping on the yellow areas. Then I'll feather it out around 10% again. Hue, saturation, and brightness, and this will let me adjust just those areas of the outline. So I'm going to brighten them to make them a little bit fainter, and then also shift the hue so it's a little bit more reddish or yellowish. And this is just a way to make the outlines a little bit more subtle on the yellow areas. And with the outlines finished, we can move on and add some spots. And these are going to be on their own layer as well, set to multiply. For the color, I'm going to use a reddish black tone. And then for the brush, I'll use the splatter brush, and I'll just loosely kind of brush it on like this. And then to refine it, I'll grab the eraser brush, set to the fine liner pen, and I'll start by erasing it from any of the white areas. And then I'll shrink the brush size quite a bit and just kind of randomly scribble over some of the spotted areas just to lighten them up. After that, I'll continue on this same layer with the same color, but I'm going to change my brush to the fine liner pen, and I'll use this at a really small size just to add the details on the tips. And it's optional, but you can also use a kind of lighter version of this color and scribble on the crown area. Then you can grab the water blender and just kind of blend it out just to make it look a little bit more variegated. Then you can use the eraser brush just to kind of carve it and facet it so it fits within the crown. And at this point, with the bananas pretty much finished, I'm going to merge all the layers for them together onto one, and we can move on to the last step here, which is just refining the colors. So I don't want all these bananas to look exactly the same, so I'm going to show you a trick here. So for example, if I choose a kind of a yellowish green tone like this, I can just drag it and drop it onto one of these bananas, and it basically turns it into a green one. And I can do a similar trick on this one as well, but I'm just going to use a sort of more orangey shade of yellow. Now for this bunch of bananas, it's a little bit more tricky. I don't really like how they look all exactly the same color. So what I'm going to do is use the freehand selection tool, and I'm just going to select maybe these two at the end. I'll reconnect it. I'll choose a slightly greenish yellow tone, and I'll just drop it onto those. And this is just a way of kind of preventing all the bananas from looking exactly the same. Now for my own project, I need more variety because I want to make a pattern. And I think I can do that just by recycling the ones I already painted. So for example, I can just isolate this green banana, kind of move it off to the side and then create a duplicate and sort of collage it into a different banana element. I also want to make a variation of the other banana just by cutting it in half and then painting the interior details. And then also, kind of as the last step, I almost forgot this. If you want, you can also add some more kind of highlight details. So for that, I'll use the annoying pen, and this time I'll use pure white, and I'm just going to add on some very light kind of white lines like this. This can kind of boost the contrast and make them look a little bit shinier. And just like that, these bananas are finished. As I mentioned, I was originally planning to use these to make like a repeating pattern, and I think the result turned out pretty good. If you're curious about how to make patterns like this yourself, I have another tutorial where I explain that in detail, and you can watch it next. As always, if you think I've earned it, please give this video a like, and I'll see you in the next video.